So to officially get started, welcome. We are New England Gilbert and Sullivan Society, and we have been hosting virtual events since last spring, when all the performing venues and performing groups unfortunately had to shut down. We've done a variety of things, and we have a variety of events coming up. On February 5th, we are going to be sponsoring a trivia night in conjunction with Maine, Gilbert, and Sullivan, and that will be right here on a Saturday night at 7 on Zoom, which is pretty much our home at this point. On February 27th, we are going to be having another viewing party. This time it will be of the ballet Pineapple Paul, which was produced by Valley Light Opera a few years ago with the dancers of Amherst Ballet. And so we will have some discussion of that, as well as seeing the video of it. And then on March 27th, Professor John Dreslin is going to be leading a comparison of the Gilbert and Sullivan operetta Princess Ida with the Tennyson poem on which it is based, which is titled The Princess. So those are some things we have coming up. If you have ideas for other programs that you'd like to see us do, get in touch with me. You can find me on Facebook or through negas.org. And we are always looking for new and interesting things to do that feature our heroes. The technical requirements of Zoom are such that it's very difficult to do operettas. And so we are sort of focusing on other aspects of their works. We've done some of Gilbert's plays, and we will be doing some more of those again later this year. So I am going to turn the program over to Professor John Dreslin, who is a longtime aficionado of Gilbert and Sullivan and a pretty new member of the NEGAS Board of Directors, to talk about the video that we're going to watch tonight. What we're going to do is have, he's going to talk to us a little bit. We're going to watch the video, and then we will open things back up to conversation, and we will continue recording until discussion of the program kind of tapers off. We'll quit recording, and we can all just hang out in the lobby and talk after that for as long as anybody wants to. So I am going to turn my video off and turn things over to John. Thank you.
Okay, well, hello everyone. Thank you for coming. I'm not really a professor. I'm a doctor, but it's a dental doctor. I'm a retired dentist. I've been on the NEGAS board probably since August or September, I believe it was. What we're going to show today is the video of Mikado from the Criterion Collection, issued it in 2011. I just checked on Amazon, and the price, it is available on Amazon. The price on Amazon for new ones is $18.49. It's not to be confused with the D'Oyly Carte version from the 60s, from 1966, which is a lot more complete, but I'll get into that later. The contents on the disc, oh, by the way, this is what it looks like. And the contents on the disc are as follows. First of all, we have the Mikado theatrical movie from 1939 with a running time of 91 minutes. Then we have a background interview with Rafe McPhail, professor of the theater emeritus at Bridgewater College, Virginia, and I think he's here tonight. I think he's iPad there, as I thought I recognized him. And Josephine Lee, who is a professor of English and Asian Studies from the University of Minnesota. And their joint presentation runs for about another half hour. Third, there's an interview with Mike Lee, who many of you recognize was the director of Topsy Turvy, and his interview runs for 18 minutes, and he gives his opinions about the production. Number four, we have a silent film promotion by D'Oyly Carte Opera Company uh, from 1926. It's a 5-minute video. It features their new costumes that they had made for Mikado by Charles Ricketts. It's silent. You see some of their stage movements, but not much. Mainly features their costumes. Then there's a deleted scene. I've got a little list. I'm going to talk about that a little bit more later. And then there are excerpts from the 1939 radio broadcast of selections from the African American rendition of the Swing Mikado and Michael Todd's production of the Hot Mikado, which features Bill Bojangles Robinson singing My Object All Sublime with some tap dancing sounds in the back. Interesting thing was in 1939, this is the same year that this movie was released, and you had two other versions of Mikado played on Broadway, the Swing Mikado and the Hot Mikado. And I think there was also a standard version of Mikado going on at the same time. So 1939 was a big year if you were into Mikado. Um, the Swing Mikado and Hot Mikado, those numbers are very interesting sounding, well worth listening to. Also included in the package is a booklet featuring an essay by critic Jeffrey O'Brien, who is described as the editor-in-chief of the Library of America. About the movie. It was produced by permission of Rupert D'Oyly Carte, who hoped to further promote audience sizes and interest in the company around the world. Jeffrey Toy, former music director for D'Oyly Carte, who had much to do with the reshaping of Ruddigore as we now know it, including composing the overture that is most commonly used today, was the producer and adapter. He also conducted the movie score with the London Symphony Orchestra. Toy went to Hollywood to enlist a director for the project. He settled on Victor Schertzinger. Victor was a very logical choice because not only was he an experienced cinematic director who would go on to direct the first two of the Bob Hope Bing Crosby Road films, but was also a highly gifted musician. He had been a violin prodigy as a child and then a popular songwriter and cinematic composer. Costumes for the movie were done by Vertes, Vertes, but were based on the Charles Ricketts costumes that were in use by D'Oyly Carte at the time. Indeed, those costumes were used right up until the D'Oyly Carte Opera Company closed. And those were the costumes that had been premiered in the 1926 production. Ricketts was a front-ranked English artist who had a fine collection of Japanese prints and was an authority on Japanese costume and art. While he closely followed Japanese tradition, Ricketts allowed himself some liberties as well, such as the suggestion of a big black block in the shape of the executioner's hat. And he dressed the Mikado as a shogun or principal representative of the emperor rather than as the emperor himself. The chorus was made up entirely of the current D'Oyly Carte chorus of the time. Plus, they recruited between 60 and 20 more past members of the D'Oyly Carte Company. So it's a much enlarged chorus. One thing that you'll notice in the chorus movement is it's a lot more fluid and naturalistic than what we usually associate with the traditional D'Oyly Carte representations. There's not so many of these arch groupings and unison fan work and all that sort of stuff that we're used to. And the chorus is supplemented also by a great many non-singing extras. The principal cast is mainly composed of D'Oyly Carte people, with a couple of notable exceptions, and they're pretty big ones. Nanky Poo, and Yum Yum. The publicity for the Mikado movie emphasized the romantic aspects of the story, making it seem much more like a Hollywood musical than a Gilbert and Sullivan operetta. This somewhat explains the casting of the American crooner Kenny Baker, who was well known to American audiences through radio appearances, particularly with the Jack Benny radio show. He is so obviously American in this otherwise completely English cast that he was often referred to as Yankee Poo. Part of Yum Yum was played by an English musical theater actress, Jean Collin, who at least sounds right for the part. At least she's English. Also, the part of the Mikado was given to John Barclay, who was originally from England, had spent a small amount of time with D'Oyly Carte, but was at this time better known for his acting work in Australia. The two big D'Oyly Carte stars of the time who do make it into the movie are Martin Green as Coco and Sidney Greenville as Pooh Bah. They are such obvious masters of their parts that they stand out immediately among the other cast members. As some of you may know, Martin Green, among other positions, was artistic director of the Simsbury Light Opera Company of Connecticut for the 2 years before his death. Now I want to just for you to keep in mind that this movie was before the days of TV. And I'm old enough to somewhat remember what the movie going experience was like in the 40s. I wasn't alive in the 30s, but typically a movie experience consisted of two about 90-minute feature films, and then there'd be coming attractions. There'd be a newsreel that went from 5 to 10 minutes, and often a cartoon. So Hollywood musicals, Hollywood movies at that point were basically limited to about 90 minutes. And I think we should keep that in mind as we go forward. So Toy and Schertzinger were faced with the dilemma of how to take an opera which runs uncut for over 2 hours without intermission and condense it into a 90-minute film. So think about that. If you had to condense Mikado into 90 minutes, what would you keep in? What would you leave out? And even further, think of if you had to now do a 90-minute film of, say, Hamilton. What kind of compromises would you have to do for that? So let's keep that in mind when we consider this production. I'm sure that they would have loved to have had everything in it, but they had to make cuts. So there are some brutal cuts in both the music and the dialogue. Practically all of Cadishaw's music is out, which is unfortunate because Constance Willis was an excellent singer. They further degraded her by adding a hint of a mustache to her makeup. The following numbers, by my count, are completely cut from the movie. Young Man Despair, that's Pooh Bah's solo in the first act. The Ladies' Chorus with principals, So Please You Sir, We Much Regret. That's out completely. The Hour of Gladness in the Act 1 finale by Kadishaw is cut out. The quintet in the second act, See How the Fates Their Gifts Allot, that's gone. Alone and Yet Alive, the other Kadishaw number, is out. There's Beauty in the Bellow of the Blast, the Kadishaw and Coco duet in the second act. That's also out. And I've got a little list. Now, this actually was filmed and is available on the disc as a deleted scene. However, it contains the original N-word from the original lyrics, but it was mainly cut because it depicted Neville Chamberlain and Hitler at a time when appeasement was the word of the day. Most 3- and 2-verse numbers have at least one verse cut. Our Great Mikado Virtuous Man, they leave out a verse. The two ladies' choruses, Comes the Train of Little Ladies and Braid the Raven Hair, you only basically hear the last reiteration of those choruses. Brightly Dawns Our Wedding Day. is only one verse. And Mikado's song, "From Every Kind of Man Obedience I Expect," is only one verse. Um, although My Object All Sublime is two verses. Plus, the first and second act finales are cut drastically. The reprise of "He's Going to Marry Yum Yum" in the second act finale is cut. Surprisingly, though, there are a couple of encores. Here's a "Howdy Do" and "Flowers That Bloom in the Spring," although the encores are presented without any kind of musical pause. It just runs right into them. I was especially interested in "The Flowers That Bloom in the Spring" because it features the re-instrumented encore verse, which is present in the score, and I have seen in the orchestral part, featuring a prominent bassoon part, but which I've never used and never heard played before. But it's in there in the encore of "Flowers That Bloom in the Spring." So when you see that encore, bear that in mind. There is an underscoring in the final dialogue scene, which I find extremely irritating, but that's my opinion. One more oddity. There is a prologue included in the action that begins in Mikado's court, as Nanki Poo is ordered to marry Kadishaw. You hear the opening men's chorus in this portion. It then follows him fleeing the court in disguise and becoming a part of the Titipu town band, playing a rather odd-looking sort of bamboo trombone. He sees Yum Yum and goes to serenade her outside her window with a verse of "The Sun Who's Raised." So you get to hear the first verse of "The Sun Who's Raised" sung by a tenor. Later on in Act 2, Yum Yum will once again sing the same verse of "The Sun Who's Raised," but in neither version do we ever hear the second verse. But the one real gem that I find of the whole film is Martin Green's rendition of "Titwillow." Very, very nice. So with these reservations in mind, let's turn now and watch the film. So I'm going to turn things back to Jackie, and we will watch the Mikado as envisioned by Toy and Shirt Singer.
Well, that was fun.
That was different.
Disconcerting in a way. The cuts.
Well,
So-
shall we have any questions, answers, whatever?
So I found it delightful within the realm of things that you missed.
Well, this is Carol Connolly, a former member of Connecticut Gilbert and Sullivan. I still am in my heart. I now live in Delaware. I wanted you to know that I am watching this movie with Mr. John Dennison, who was a member of the Doily Card Company and knew Martin Green and many of the people in this film. And it was super, super. He knew every line that was missing, every song that was cut, everything. But it was beautiful. I'll let him speak for himself.
It was really nice. I missed some of the things that they cut, like "Beauty in the Bellow of the Blast" was cut. And what was the other one?
Alone and Yet Alive.
Alone and Yet Alive, yes. But other than that, it was really good.
What?
And I remember, of course, I knew Martin Green very well. And I recognized Kenny Baker. I told Carol, "My God, that's Kenny Baker." He was not actually a member of the company, by the way. He was imported for the film.
How did you guys get a hold of this? Where did you find it?
It's on Amazon, Carol.
Oh my God, you're kidding me.
Yeah, it's on Amazon. It costs like $18.50 or so. But I actually got when it first came out in 2011, so I've had it for quite a while.
Wow. Well, this was a great idea.
I've seen this before, but not for a very long time. And I did see Martin Green play Coco in 1952 with his own company.
Wow.
He had left Doily. It was a present for my 5th birthday. My father took me the first time I had ever been to the theater.
Oh my gosh. That's,
Started right at the top.
What an
And these-
auspicious beginning.
It was. And these cuts are not so different from the one-act version of Mikado I've done, since 1973 off and on. I haven't done it much in this century, but I did it in the last century for about 20 years.
Everyone, feel free to start your video, by the way, especially if you're speaking. It's
oh,
easier to talk to people you can see.
start video. I never even thought of that. Here we are.
Here we are.
Ah, yes.
Hi, Carol.
Great to
Hello.
see you.
Good to see you, pal. I'm so glad you sent this to me, the link. I'm delighted, absolutely delighted. This was fun.
A quick plug, by the way, the organization that puts this out is called the Criterion and Collection, and they have some truly remarkable films that are available through Criterion, and this is just one of literally hundreds of them, and they do some really great stuff.
Oh, okay. How do you find them?
Just Google the Criterion Collection.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. That's worth looking at for sure. Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for those who missed it when I did the introduction, I
Yeah.
was saying, they had to get Mikado down to 90 minutes from 2 hours. And
Here's what I
a
said.
nice little thought process. If you each figured, if you had to cut down Mikado from 2 hours to 90 minutes, what would you leave out and what would you put in?
Well, apparently I was thinking the same way they were, though I had forgotten what was in the movie and what wasn't.
Put in another disc. I would have omitted the two encores to include a little bit more of Kadishah's singing.
Yeah, I
Of
think
course-
I'm with you there, Lori.
Taking everything at a tearing pace
Oh,
certainly
I
helped.
noticed that. Yeah, I mean, I'm not a slow tempo guy when it comes to Gilbert Sullivan. Carol and Lori probably know, but man, some of the stuff left me breathless. I mean, they were just rushing through things.
Well,
Yeah, we were.
we actually didn't miss much of the music. What we didn't hear was having it all sung, because there was plenty in the instrumental introduction, plenty of stuff, so that you just, it's there, you just don't hear the words.
If it were-
Sullivan rules, but Mr. Gilbert does not.
Well, John Dreslin, Connecticut Gilbert and Sullivan Society certainly appreciates you taking things a little slower. And, hi, Carol.
Well, hello. How are you?
Good. How you
That's
doing?
our president, Ed Kerrigan. I know that voice. Why don't you
Yes,
show us your face, Ed?
Yeah, turn on your video, Ed.
Yeah.
If it were just a little faster, Here's a Howdy Do might have qualified as a rap song.
It is pretty breathless to begin with, yes.
Yeah.
It is.
But
There he
when you're cutting something like Mikado, when I cut it, one of the things I said was, anytime Puba lists 7 things he's done, I'm cutting it to 5. If he lists 5, I'm cutting it to 3. So when he says I wasn't there, it's still just as big of a joke. And I had to make this case to a local producer who had asked my husband, after Matt had done 65 Nanky Poos, to do his first Coco. And he was ready to quit because this guy, who shall remain nameless, had rewritten the script. There was not a word of Gilbert left in the dialogue. And my husband was about ready to walk out, and they didn't have a replacement for him. And he went to the person and said, and we both said, if you do it this way, your audience is going to walk out and demand their money back. I said, your musical cuts are different from mine. I don't want to mess with those, but I will keep all the dialogue scenes just the same length. But I will use Gilbert's words. I think he didn't have the skill to, but he was happy with the result.
So what did you guys all think about that prologue section?
Useless. Useless.
Well,
Part of the show to me.
Hollywood audiences think of things differently. They just do.
The funny thing is, though, that at that time, people knew Gilbert and Sullivan the way they knew Shakespeare, the way they knew Bible stories. They knew what they were missing, and they could fill it in their heads. Yes.
Well,
To a much greater extent.
I think in the time that they did for that that prologue, they could have fit in a lot more of the other musical numbers and dialogue, and the story speaks for itself. You know, they didn't have to do that extra bit in there.
Mhm.
That's my feeling.
I also thought the second verse of The Sun Whose Rays would have worked perfectly well for young to sing early in the second act.
Mhm.
In fact, I think
I
it would work
confess
better than repeating the first.
that in spite of the political incorrectness, I kind of miss I've got a little list.
Mhm.
Well, as I said, that
by
is
the way,
available on the disc. That it is on the disc as a deleted scene. So if you do get the whole disc, you can see Martin Green doing a little list, and it's a very different little list than I don't think either of the verses that he does is the ones that we're used to. And as I said, he throws Hitler in there and all sorts of things.
oh, may I make a recitation, because Gilbert rewrote that song several times during his lifetime. So this was 1989. Reagan had just left office and gone to Japan and made those two speeches for $1 million each. And my Coco, this was for First Night Boston. I told him the Little List song is 2 verses long. I want the first half of the first verse and the second half of the last verse, and anything else, you may have what you like. This man was an author, playwright, and he was also a communist. And this is what he came up with. There's that land across the ocean that got beat in World War II. They haven't got a Navy, I feel safer now, don't you? But they're selling us their VCRs and high technology, and they're buying all our real estate from sea to shining sea. They also bought a president who 2 million did insist. I got him on my list. I got him on my list. You like, but it was another Coco I worked with who figured out the race line in Little List. There's the Boston marathoners and the runners of that race, which totally solves both halves of the problem. As I've written that up on Quora, as a matter of fact. And Mikado, who said the lady who dyes a chemical yellow or stains her gray hair blue is taken on Easter, and there on her keister, also during the Reagan administration, is scribed an obscene tattoo.
I see here that Rafe McPhail is in the audience. So he knows more about all this than I do. If you have any questions that I can't answer, I'm sure he can. I see your name there, Rafe. I don't hear you.
Rafe is there. I got to run, folks. Thanks for doing this. Thank you, John.
Good to
Thank
see
you for coming, Ed.
Nice seeing you,
Bye, Ed.
Carol.
Good
Nice
evening.
seeing you, Lori.
Hey, Lori over there hiding. Hello, hello.
Would people like to hear to see the deleted scene? The little
Yeah.
list?
Yeah, if they can
I
pull it up,
would.
why don't we?
Okay.
I'd love to hear the Hitler reference.
In that, Mark, are you still there and able to bring it up? Don't bring it up yet, because I need to say, my husband, of course, is in the next room, so we're talking across the house. Let's, if anybody has any other questions or things that they'd like to say about the program or the film that we saw, because I'm going to turn the recording off before we play this, because I don't want it in the recording.
I would just like to volunteer that I have met two descendants of the mystical German. Because we know who the mystical German was. He was a reverend, he was a Swedenborgian pastor, and his name was Reverend Toffel. And I know 2 Reverend Toffels who are both Swedenborgian pastors. I haven't seen either of them in several years. They may be gone, but I have known them. I've worked with them.
I'm married to a mystical German.
Name Toffel?
Right back behind me. Says hi to you, Carol. She's saying hi to you.
Hello, Monica. I love you, baby.
Janice, you were at my house once. Years ago. Juliet too.
Yes. Yes.
Janice, you're
At Hyde
muted.
Park.
You are muted.
You, John Dreslin? No. Yeah, you should be in here. I'm
I'm
not.
fine. No, I'm fine. I'm fine right there.
Janice, you're muted.
There we go.
There we
Here we
go.
go.
I'm not the greatest on Zoom.
You moved far away.
Yep. And it was in the high 80s here today because the Santa Ana winds are blowing. We're on the coast in Ventura, California.
It's in the high 40s in New Hampshire, so, you know.
Did you not get snow?
Nope. Rain,
We
lots of lots.
We got poured
Right.
rain, but I had a customer up, I thought close to you, say they couldn't get there because they were this deep in snow.
Yeah, it was an elevation event.
Yeah,
Above 3,000 feet, they had a foot of snow.
that must be it.
But we're just above sea level. We had 3 inches of rain.
We got at least that.
Oh, I wish we had 3 inches of rain. We've only had an inch and 0.2.
Mm.
That's the whole rainy season so far. We haven't had rain. It just keeps going above us.
Maybe
So
we need to
it's-
build a pipeline.
What?
Maybe we need to build a pipeline.
What? Or that's what you can bring down from Alaska.
Yes.
I wanted to say about the movie, I don't think they didn't skip on the production values.
No.
Oh,
No,
no.
Seemed like a
No,
cast
no.
of thousands.
Yeah,
and
the singing was phenomenal, and the acting was out of this world. It's the best I've ever seen in the GNS.
the costumes were just mind-boggling to me. Some of the choices that were made were just like, there were some strange choices out there.
Mikado's headdress.
30s influence.
Well, and Coco as a duck, and Kadishaw's Obi on her front instead of her backside. Just lots of funny things.
Yes, and the inexplicable choice to give her a mustache.
Yeah.
Yes.
Notice that. Yeah, inexplicable.
You
John
know,
just
she's
said
supposed
he
to be
would-
elderly and unattractive, but it
We always
was too much.
Yeah, I would, as the British would say, I would suggest that it exceeds the bounds of decency.
And you know, the wigs in that production were phenomenal,
Oh,
particularly Coco's and Poohbah's.
You couldn't see the lines and some of it
Couldn't
just
see a
looks
line anywhere,
Mm-mm.
No.
even in a close-up.
some of it looks like their regular hairdo and they just stuck something on top to make
Mhm.
it neat.
I was trying to figure out the physics of a bald cap with that huge, must have been heavy thing
Yeah.
in the back. And I'm thinking, God, he must have had that thing stapled to his head.
Well, they can be made light. When we made them for Sudbury's Mikado, they were like a wired, almost like an open weave canvas that had been
Mhm.
stitched. And that, you balanced it just right. And it works. But it's all in balance as well.
Mhm. Mhm.
My wife was very bothered by Nanky Poo's hair. She hated it.
This,
Oh, no, he had that like curl thing, you know, around the edge.
Look like a teenager.
Yeah.
He first looked at me, he says, is that a woman or is that a man?
Right, exactly, yeah.
yeah.
Yes.
There, I had questions about the Nanky Poo hairdo as well.
Yeah. Mhm.
I was thinking